Friends, thank you for joining us in this episode of Spirit and Truth Media. I know it's been a little bit over a month since we had an episode come out, but today we have a guest, and the story and the testimony that we will be sharing, I believe it applies to many people's lives today who are going through dark, dark places in life. And I just want to remind you that the reason we are doing this Spirit and Truth Media, this podcast where we interview guests, is it's not a secret that life it's a difficult path, and it's full of darkness. People are in state of hopelessness, drug addiction, families are broken, people have very deep emotional wounds, and they carry that luggage with them thinking that their life is doomed forever. And so I'm one of those people who were at rock bottom. Today, my guest is Juan Carlos, my brother in Christ. I have known him since 2014. And his testimony, his story, it's full of these moments where you would think that's definitely a dead end for a person. I mean, you have doctors who are saying you're bipolar, who are saying you're schizophrenic. You have a state of hopelessness. You have a child that is born in Mexico, Jalisco, Mexico, who's brought to the US and doesn't have legal status. And now, after God took his brokenness, after God took that life that with the human eyes was maybe not repairable, um, he has a family now. He's a father of three. He's happily married, and more than that, he's got a purpose. He's a pastor already, been a pastor for few years, and this is a second church he's planting in Pennsylvania. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. So man, it's good to have you in the studio today. I believe that this testimony, if God will bless it, it will touch the right hearts, and people will get something out of it. So that's what we're praying for. Juan, thank you for joining me, and welcome to the show, man. Just wanted to ask you if we could start talking, uh, you know, focus a little bit on your childhood. What kind of family you came from, maybe the blessings and the hardships of your childhood, and just kind of explain to us, where it all began for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Roman. It's a blessing to join you this morning, and God bless you and your ministry, brother, and the podcast that you do. Yeah, it's been the pleasure knowing you for the longest time, and I still remember meeting you when I was there at the rehab center, and you were coming back from being the missionary. In fact, I remember being in the rehab center as a student and helping out. I believe it was your wife and her sister preparing for their wedding with your brother-in-law Dima,
Yeah.
helping them out doing ornaments and stuff. So man, I've known you for a long time, my brother. It's been a blessing seeing what the Lord has done in your life as well. Serving with you in many different things, even doing the teens retreat in Lake Tahoe with you and another brother in Christ. So it's been a blessing serving with you in many different moments that God has given us an opportunity to be around each other and see each other's growth. Um my childhood, Roman, I'm not gonna say I had a horrible childhood.
Yeah.
I think I grew up blessed with a mother that tried to do her best for us. So I come from a little bit of a broken family. It's me and three siblings. So I have two sisters and one brother. But me, older sister, one dad. Then me and the younger two siblings are a different dad. So my mother immigrated into this country with me and my older sister when we were kids. This was back in 91. I'm a 90s baby, so I was like a year and 3 months at that. Um, we immigrated in 91, and right away my mother planted roots here in California, up in Vacaville, California, where we pretty much resided in our whole life. As she met my stepdad here and got married very quickly and took me in as a father figure. So growing up, I did have a father figure. It was my stepdad, but of course, understanding that this is not full on biological father, but for the most part, they try to do their best by us. But of
Yeah.
course, with any immigrant family, I think you're very limited to the resources. You're very limited to the areas where you can and cannot live in especially in Vacaville. You have a high number of Hispanics, of Mexicans, and you're almost always limited to those communities. And I think that's one downfall as immigrants is kind of like you have to try to integrate into the community, but you're integrating within the community you're a part of. So if you're like, if you come
Yeah.
from Italy, you're growing up with all the Italians. If you're, you're Mexican, you're growing up with all the Mexicans. If you're coming from Haiti, you're growing up with all the Haitians. I think that's just, it just is, it's normal to have that. And for us in Vacaville, that's how it was for us. It was growing up with around all the Mexicans, growing up in neighborhoods that they were, highly populated with immigrants, with Mexicans. And of course, for anybody that grows up in California, whether it's Southern California, whether it's Northern California, especially being Hispanic, it's no different when it comes to the grass of gangs being able to touch young lives, young kids, influence them. It's the same thing in Southern California, same thing in Northern California. So we grew up in a neighborhood initially where we weren't doing horrible. It was a small apartment, a little 2-bedroom apartment. Me and my older sister would share a room, and parents try to always do the best they can for us. Now we have a third sibling. Now that little apartment is a little bit too tight. It's time to move on to a mobile home. Now we live in the mobile home. And this mobile home for me, man, it was a great time. Had a lot of friends, but at the same time, I started making the wrong friends. It was those moments where it's not like today, man, where kids are playing video games and they're just stuck at home. For me, it was kind of
Yeah.
more of like, hey, we're gonna give you video games so you can stay at home. For me, it was like, man, I just want to be outside. I want to be out on the bike. I want to be out on the mountain catching lizards.
Yeah.
But eventually, I mean, of course, you start doing the things you're not supposed to be doing. I remember the first time I tried cigarettes was when I was in elementary school. Um, and unfortunately, I wish I could say it was just because of friends, but it wasn't. It was actually an older cousin that gave me cigarettes for my first time when I was a young kid. And, pretty much you start bringing this into your friends. They're bringing stuff in as well. You guys are influencing each other. Next thing you know, man, I'm in seventh grade trying weed for the first time in my life at seventh grade.
Let me ask you a question real
Yeah.
quick. Do you think there was some type of pain that you were trying to escape? And you mentioned coming from a broken family. Was there any type of, you know, within your heart, you know what I'm saying, that, oh, if my father was only there, or maybe this victim mentality, or maybe if I we had more money? And were you chasing to escape reality, or was it just like, hey, being curious? Because we're growing up right now in a culture where people are indoctrinated to be victims, to have this victim mentality, like, oh, you're an immigrant, you are, living in this neighborhood, there is no future for you, and so this is why you're doing this? Or was it more of like this childish, innocent, let me try out and see if this makes me feel good? I want to see if there is any connection with that in your life.
I would say the only one thing that I ever held anything in any direction would be kind of more my relationship that I would see my stepfather have with my older sister and not with me.
Yeah,
So in the sense of she played women's basketball, little girls basketball. I was
yeah,
doing boxing and I was doing soccer. And there'd be moments where it'd be like, hey, can you come to the ring with me today? Can you come watch me spar? Oh no, I can't because I'm gonna go watch your sister play basketball. For me as a young boy, it's like, how does a man would rather go see a little girl play basketball than go see his own son go box, than go play
yeah.
soccer. So for me, at moments, I kind of felt like there was some partiality with me and my older sister. I mean, it could be, sibling rivalry, sibling jealousy, but I wouldn't say at that moment I had anything like, "Oh, I wish I knew my dad," because as far as I knew my actual blood biological father, as far as I understood, was that he was abusive. He beat my mom. That's the whole reason why my mom ran away from Mexico to leave him behind because he was not a good man in general.
Mm,
So for me, there was nothing like, "Oh, I wish I knew my real dad. I wish we were more, had more money." We didn't have a bad life. So I can't say that there was a bad life on our end. I can't say that we lived in poverty. Yeah, we didn't live in the house. I mean, we lived in the mobile home, but like I'm saying, my parents, they tried their best to give us the best. Whether they could not give us a house or not is completely irrelevant. I think that they tried with what they had at the time, and for me, I was enjoying life. I was living life. I was happy. I was enjoying this. So I can't complain too much. I would say it was a blessed childhood growing up as a Catholic, doing the best. But of course, you start becoming curious. You start becoming curious. There is this nature in ourselves that we start growing this curiosity. And of course, we start feeding it with the wrong stuff. Um, for me, it started young. I started with bad music. I remember being like 11 years old, and I asked one time for a CD from Eminem with the explicit version with all the bad words, and I got it at 11 years old. Hearing all this crazy rap, this crazy bad words at 11 years old, watching all kinds of crazy horror movies. There was no censor in my life. There was no censor, uh, from the parents. There was no censor from what I can watch, what I cannot watch, what can I listen to, what can I not listen to. So I think it was very open. I see you there, buddy. Very open to just watching anything, hearing anything we wanted to, no limits at all. Uh, so I'm gonna say there wasn't anything specific at that moment in my childhood that I can relate back to right now and be like, oh, that's what was missing in my life. Other than I wish I would have had a little more attention and a little bit of a better relationship with my dad growing up. Then and when I say dad, I want to clarify this right now. I'm not talking about my biological father. I don't know this
Yeah.
man. So wearing to any moment that I say dad, I am always talking about my stepfather. That is the guy that for me he's a dad. So I never called him a stepfather growing up. It was always dad, dad, dad. So the only one thing I would say is that I wish that I would have had a better relationship with him. I don't know if there was separation from his end or my end, but I wish that that would have been differently, because maybe that would have made a bigger influence into how my life would have turned out later down the road. 100%.
Yeah, it seems like there is for a lot of young men the biggest factor which kind of takes him down the wrong path is the absence of a father or the absence of attention or guidance from a male figure. So that's you see that throughout everything. But you can go ahead and continue. I know you told me your story more in detail the other day, and so it went seeking attention from gang members, and then that leads you into this place where you feel like life is not worth living, you know suicide attempts, going through all of the struggle as a young man. Maybe you can kind of go into that. You can speak. I'm gonna adjust my camera. I don't know why the other one shut off, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No worries. Yeah. So, went through elementary, came into middle school, and like I mentioned, that 10th grade, I had already, started smoking weed, and unfortunately, that very quickly, as they say, weed being a gateway drug, I 100% agree with it. I believe it. I live that. My experience 100% started with weed. That opened the doors to a bunch of other drugs. 7th grade, I actually ended up getting expelled out of the side of town that I was growing up, and I had to get kicked over to 8th grade to a different side of town, to a different middle school, with fighting and stuff. And at that point, my parents are trying to do the best, like, hey, let's get them, let's move out of this side of town and go to the better side of town. Hopefully this is going to change, things around. But we have to understand that the problem is not where we live, and the problem is not just the people that we hang out with. If you are influenced by the side of town you live in, if you are influenced by the people you're hanging out with, they have more influence on you than anything else. Then the problem genuinely is you're a weak person, I would say. So for us to have a mentality like, hey, I'm having a rough time over here, being good, so I'm gonna just move to this side of town, but I'm still gonna hang out with the same people. Nothing is gonna change.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna move to this side of town, but I'm still gonna keep doing the same bad things that I'm doing. The problem is you. You have to understand that there's something within you that needs to change first. So my parents tried it. They tried moving us to the side of town, and slowly, other side of town, I started doing the same exact things. I started getting into fights. I started hanging out. I started finding who were the kids that have the same likes that I have. Ditching school, smoking weed, trying to smoke cigarettes at 8th grade. By the time I hit 9th grade, I was hanging out with a group of kids that were known as stoners, you know. I was still not doing horrible academically. I was still playing school for, soccer for school, still holding soccer outside of school. And, at that point, I had already given up boxing, but I was just sticking consistently to soccer. And we know that when you play sports in school, you have to have good grades. So I was trying to balance out, good grades and being good in school, but still hanging out with the wrong kids. And like I was sharing with you, slowly you can't, it's like living a double life. You're not going to do that. The same thing as Christianity, the same thing as
Yeah.
having a faith in God. You cannot live for God and live in the world. It's not going to happen. Same thing in this matter. You can't, say, hey, I want to be good in sports, be good in school, but at the same time I'm gonna hang out with all the bad kids. It's not going to happen. One of them is going to overpower the other. You're either going to have a fervent desire to want to be good, or slowly that other nature is going to take over, and you're just going to just not care about anything else. So, and that's what I did. I slowly stopped caring about everything else. Slowly started getting deeper into drugs. I started trying other drugs. I mean, if I'm going to be honest and be completely transparent here, parents, watch your kids, be involved in them in their lives 100%. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to get yourself informed. At ninth grade, I had already tried ecstasy. I almost overdosed in ninth grade on ecstasy. Uh, doing drugs in school. I was already drinking. I was already trying shrooms. I had already tried acid. I mean, I had already tried a bunch of drugs by ninth grade. I never became addicted to any of them because my thing, I would always say, I'm just a stoner. I like natural stuff. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, it just progressed, and by 11th grade, I got starved out of school. I got kicked out of high school, out of the county, because I would ditch too much. I would get into too many fights. I was hanging out with game bangers at this time. I was not making the wisest choices, man. I gave up soccer. One thing that really led up to a lot of this was when I was 15 in 10th grade, my stepdad left us. My dad, he left the scene. He was unfaithful to my mother. He cheated on her. He had another woman. There was another life that he had. And when he left, he told my mom, I'm leaving because I can't deal with the problems that Juan Carlos has anymore. Like, he's going to juvie, he's getting suspended, getting in fights, he's doing drugs, this and that. So he almost like tried to use me as an escape, trying to
Yeah.
say their marital problems were because of me. And that did a lot to me. That really messed me up because I carried that, like, the reason why my dad left was because of me. Now,
Wow.
I
That's a
immediately
heavy thing to carry, man. That's wow.
as a 15-year-old, yeah,
Yeah.
he left, and I started working with my mom at Taco Bell. I started working there trying to supposedly help out with the bills, so I was a sophomore at 15 years old, trying to tackle on a full 40-hour job and still live my life as a kid, and still trying to be a rebel and do drugs and stuff. I was working a night shift. So of course, academically, my school is lacking. I'm not doing homework. I'm ditching school. I don't care for school anymore.
Yeah.
In my eyes, I'm already a grown up. You make doing grown up things. Um, in 11th grade, I get kicked out of school, man, and it went downhill from there. By 11th grade, when I got kicked out of school at 17, I was already, I can say, getting very deep into alcoholism. I was hanging out with gangbangers. I That was the life that I wanted to aspire to be. I look at it now, and I look at it this way. What I was looking for in these older guys was, I was looking for the love of a father that I did not know I needed. I was looking for the approval of a man, of an older man above me. So when I would have these older guys above me telling me to do things like, "Hey, go do this, go do that," yeah, I'm gonna go do it. Why? Because I wanted to hear, like, "Hey, good job. Hey, like, you're doing good." Like,
Yeah.
whether it was good stuff or bad stuff, I just wanted to have approval from somebody. And it's very sad that I had to go look for that somewhere else. I had to go look for that in guys that are, having me do criminal stuff that potentially can land me in jail, just so I can feel like I am wanted, just so I can feel like I'm loved. So it just comes back to, I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and at the same time destroying my life and destroying my relationship with my mom.
Man, I wanted to highlight something. Um, so this the beginning of your childhood, you were aspiring, you were an athlete, boxing, soccer. I'm sure you had goals. You weren't just like playing these games. Maybe you had a dream to become something or use these sports to help you get somewhere in life. But I noticed this happens in pretty much 100% of people that start going into drugs. Is once drugs come into your life, they suck out all the good motivation. They suck you dry of planning for your future. You're only living to catch that high, and everything good slowly disappears. And even if you're able to be a productive drug addict for a year, 2, 3, 4 years, but once it gets into deeper drugs and drugs that really get a hold of your soul, you seem to lose everything. All the desires for good, for life, for the future, they're gone. And that leads people into this state of depression, hopelessness, where people start to degrade, mentally. Their psychological state is destroyed. Um, I know you were telling me that these drugs, going from smoking weed and then trying all these social drugs, and you're saying, "Hey, I'm not a drug addict. I just like to do the things that God created, right?
Yeah, the clean
God,
stuff, the natural
why
stuff.
would God create weed, right? If we can't smoke it, right?" But then you ask the same questions like, okay, cocaine also a plant, and so is heroin is derived from the poppy, and it's like, no, it's what is that substance doing to you mentally, physically, and in your relationships around you. It's causing you to become a thief. It's causing you to become unstable mentally, and it does a lot of things to you to destroy you. um, Kind of lead us into this state where you are done playing with drugs and now you're finding yourself in an addiction where you're um I really
Yeah,
want you to maybe hit
yeah, yeah.
that
So when I hit that point of getting kicked out of school at 17, I was already realized that I was getting real deep into alcohol. Um, when we consider alcoholics, man, we're thinking about late 20s, early 30s, late 40s, man. 17-year-old alcoholic. Literally, that's what I was,
yeah.
man. 17-year-old alcoholic. And for me, it was like, oh, I'm just partying, just having fun. But man, it was more than that. Like it was always like every Monday, massive hangover. Like to me, it was like a weekend thing, like just every single weekend having a drink. But it wasn't even like just have a couple of drinks. It was like, pass out, blackout drunk.
Yeah.
And this went on from 17, 18, 19, going through partying, hanging out with friends. At the same time, my addictions just keep growing. I am a full blown everyday smoking weed. I'm selling drugs. Yeah, I'm consuming my own product. I start selling coke. I'm doing coke every day almost now, at this point. But alcohol was like definitely a big stronghold on me at that time.
Mm.
And then there happened a moment right before all this was when I was 18. I I was facing deportation. Uh, ICE came to my house and picked me up. At the time, I thought it was DEA agents, and I had my little sister, take care of some stuff for me, flush some stuff down the toilet and whatnot. And it's interesting, like you're involving an innocent 14, 15-year-old kid into your filth, into your crime, just to kind of cover up for you. Well, it turns out it wasn't DEA, it was immigration. I got picked up from my house and I got taken over to Tacoma, Washington. I ended up spending 3 months in Tacoma, Washington, in the ICE center, holding center, about to get deported. During this time in ICE, I get put into a high tier of known gang members. I get put with a whole bunch of southern people from Southern California, a bunch of Southerners, a bunch of guys from MS-13, man. And I'm a kid from Northern California. These are like, man, some of these guys, they were getting deported for murder. They're wanted for murder in their countries. They're gonna get deported back. They're facing life in prison, man. These guys don't care, and I'm a young kid. I I had a bad experience there, man, at the Homeland Security. I actually ended up at one moment becoming fearful of my life. An older man that I was bunkmates with, he told me, man, you need to get out of this cell. You need to out of this pod. You need to ask for protective custody because there's a bunch of Sureños in here and they know there's one Norteño. And I'm going to tell you right now, the way you talk, 100% is you. I got scared, man. I got scared. I ended up asking for protective custody. I get transferred over. And those guys, they found me in the new pod, man, and they started threatening me. They told me, like, if you leave this pod, man, we're gonna get you. You better stay here, protective custody.
Yeah.
Uh, you would think that that would be the moment that would kind of scare someone straight. Like straight up being locked up, being told, like, man, you get out of here, we're gonna get you. I get out 3 months later, and I start making these promises, like anybody else when they're in jail, man. I'm gonna promise you, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that differently. I come back. I'm promising I'm gonna be different. I was not different. I came back. I was just more secretive. I was just better at hiding stuff. In the following year, when I was 19, a cousin of mine in LA gets shot down and killed. He gets shot 8 times in his stomach. He was 15 years old. He was 3 days away from being 16. Me and him were just 3 days apart from our birthdays. So this was actually on my 19th birthday that he got shot and killed. I remember getting the phone call and being told that my cousin had just died. Man, I can't even tell you what I felt. I can't describe it. It was just such a pit in my stomach to know that he also was involved in gangs. He was a rival gang member and he got killed by norteños. And I'm over here claiming to be a norteño. And it's like, wow, that's crazy. The way life works, that there's no respect, there's no boundaries of life. And I understood, like, one day it can be me. When I attempted to go to his funeral, I got a threat from some of his friends, and they just told me, like, hey, don't come unless you want another death in the family. I couldn't even go to his own funeral. And me and him,
Yeah.
we grew up very close to each other. It was a moment of realizing for me that if I keep hanging around with these kind of people, I'm gonna end up in the same boat, man. I'm gonna get into some serious trouble one day. At that point, man, I already had friends that were some friends did leave the gang scene, some friends remained in it. And when people say that there's no such thing as an old gangster because they're either dead or they're in prison, 100%, man, is true. 100%. I already had friends that were already looking at life in prison at that time. I already had friends that were going through some very bad cases because of stuff they got into, heavy stuff because of gangbanging. So for me, it was like, man, I need to get out of this. I got out of that group of friends, but now I have people that don't respect me no more, people that are calling me a dropout, people that are calling me fake. And I went from being friends with these guys to now becoming just a customer buying drugs off of these guys. And my habit, my addiction grew heavier past that point. I tried making a move, like I had mentioned, you can move, but the problems are going to be the same. I tried making the move with the girlfriend out to Michigan. Man, I got into the same problems over there, into the same addiction. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna come there. I'm not gonna smoke cigarettes. I'm not gonna drink.
Yeah.
It didn't even last 2 weeks. By 2 weeks, I was already drunk in my apartment. I came back to California like a year and a half later, and I was a mess. I was a mess. At that point, I was already kind of like hating life. Like, man, what am I doing with myself? I'm a loser. I'm 21, 22, and was living in my mom's house, sleeping on her couch. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm a straight alcoholic. I smoke weed. I have to steal to support my habits now. I'm
Yeah.
working, but it's not enough anymore. At this point, Roman, I was full blown alcoholic, smoking weed every day, smoking like 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and I'm heavily into coke. I'm smoking it now. I literally every time I smoke weed, I'm smoking coke with it every single time now. At this point. I do not have a single sober day for the past 4 or 5 last years. There has not been a day that I have not drinking alcohol. Like literally every day, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, I'm drinking alcohol, and I'm not glorifying that. I just want you to understand to what position I ended up in at that moment in my life. One day I just get tired of it, and I'm like, man, what's the point of living? I'm not doing anything with my life. Like, what am I doing? And I consider killing myself, overdosing on pills. And that's what I try to do. I try to take a bunch of pills. I tried to commit suicide, and I ended up in the mental asylum.
Yeah.
I ended up in the mental asylum for like about I like about a week at this point, a little bit under a week. And when I came out, I don't believe I got diagnosed with major depression with severe, these were the medical terms, major depression with severe reoccurrence. They told me I have bipolar disorder, and they told me that I have schizophrenia. I'm already showing signs of schizophrenia. I'm like, man, 22 years old with all these issues. That's not good. Especially when you hear schizophrenia. It's like, man, you're going crazy. You're seeing
Yeah.
things. So the remedy that I was given was I have to go see a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever. And I'm giving a bunch of pills, a bunch of medication. One of these medicines is going to help me to start, getting me off of alcohol. It was a schedule, like in 4 hours take this pill, at 6 hours take that pill, every 8 hours take this pill. One day, I just, out of curiosity, I counted how many pills it was, man. Can you believe 23 pills every single day that I had to be taking
Wow.
for this stuff? I remember taking these pills, and here's the thing: I did not feel sad. I did not feel angry at life. I did not feel like like, oh, like life is a burden. So I didn't have this desire to want to no longer kill myself, but I did not feel life at all. I did not feel happiness. I didn't, man, you can tell me a joke and I would just sit there just blankly staring at you. Like
Yeah.
the funniest joke, and I could not laugh. I did not feel
You're
joy at all.
zombied out, man. All
You
those
feel
pharmaceuticals.
you feel like a shell, like an empty
Yeah.
person. Yeah, I probably felt worse under all that stuff than I did it at my lowest point. I'm gonna be honest, man, because you feel so numb, like you feel like you're non-existent. Then it's like you're living that state of non-existence with this medicine that is not gonna solve the problem. It's just masking the problem. I I stopped taking this stuff like about a month and a half later. I stopped taking all this stuff, and not even a week later, I tried to kill myself again.
Wow.
Uh, I was I was a cutter. I have scars on my legs from it. I have scars on my arms from it. That second time, I tried to slit my wrist, and I ended up in the mental asylum the second time. But this time, it was more serious. I was out in St. Helena. It's a very big facility there. I was there for 2 weeks. Um, when I came out, man, I think I at that moment I accepted that this is just life for me.
Yeah.
I think I accepted that this is it. I mean, there's nothing really going for me. I'm 23 at this point now. There's nothing going for me, man. My life revolves around going to work to sustain the habit, pretty much. That's literally what it comes down to. It was a big one for me was alcohol and coke at this time. That was the big one for me. I can't even say weed anymore because weed at that point was not even a drug anymore. It didn't do nothing to me. Like
Mm.
you get past the point where every addict goes through this. What gets you high today, keep doing that same drug in 2 years, it's not going to do the same effect. You're going to have to be doing more and more and more. So weed for me at that point was nothing. um Literally my life was always front me drugs and I'll pay you next week, just living, just getting paid day by day, getting paid just so I can continue my habit every single day. I started stealing from my mom. I was the nephew that when I come to your house for a barbecue, you're hiding your purse because
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal for you. No boundaries, man. I'll steal from family, I'll steal from friends. I was burning every bridge, man, that I had, just because my habit was more important than my relationship with people. But yet, I would have the nerve to say, I love my family so much that I would take a bullet for my family. I love my mom to death. I would die for my mom. And my mom asked me a simple question was one time, she was like, you claim to love me. You say you love me so much. You say you love your nephews, you love your siblings. If you love me so much, can you stop doing drugs? And I just sat there and I'm like, I can't. I can't. I think I love alcohol and I think I love drugs more than you. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. You know, you have to ask yourself that question. You say you love you're a parent, you have kids and you're in addiction and you can say, I love my kids. I love my kids so much. But do you love your kids enough to leave the drugs for your kids? It's a challenging
Yeah.
question, but you need to be honest with yourself. And I was honest. I was like, I can't do it. I love these drugs and I want to get help, but I don't know how to. And I started
Do
looking
you
for
think you love the drugs, or were you just did by that time you were so conditioned that life without that substance was like it was boring, it was too painful. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're in that constant high for 6, 7, 8 years, when you don't have it, you feel like you're naked. You feel like world is too much. You can't handle everything is boring, or you know what I'm saying? It's almost like this veil, this blanket that falls over your worldview and perception, and you're just. I think it's probably one of the most severe levels of deception. You're deceived on the level of your chemical brain chemistry, where your dopamine receptors in your body and your balance of chemistry is so offset by chemicals that without it, you just don't know how to function. You know what I'm saying?
that's exactly how I was gonna say. You just don't know how to function without it. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, when you're about to leave your house to go somewhere, you have like a list of things you got to take: your wallet, your phone, your car keys, whatever it is. It's like that's what your body becomes so accustomed to it, like you cannot function without it. For me,
Yeah.
that's what it came down to. For me, I would wake up in the mornings to go to work. I work construction at the time, and I cannot get up out of bed and have a cup of water because I'm gonna puke that water. The first thing my body's asking for is alcohol, just so I can not feel dizzy, just so I don't have a headache, just so I don't feel nauseous in the morning. At this point, I didn't know this was an addiction. I did not know. what I thought this was, I thought that because I had been drinking for so many years nonstop, I always told myself, "Oh, this is just the hangover. This is the hangover of hangovers that I've never had because I've been drinking every day for the last X amount of years, you know?" So for me, it was like, "Oh, this is just the ultimate hangover that I've never had." Little did I know this was withdrawals.
Yeah.
This was a straight full blown addiction. That's literally what I thought it was, you know? So I I tried looking for help. I wanted to, and I started looking, researching rehab centers. I started looking for, uh, and keep in mind during this whole time, I'm still fighting this deportation. I'm not off the hook. I didn't just get, I got bailed out, and it's like, all right, go live your life. That's not how this works out, man. I'm off the hook, but I'm still with the lawyer, still going like once, twice a year back up to Washington, trying to fight this deportation case this whole entire time. At one point, it gets transferred to San Francisco, and my own lawyer gets kicked off the case because he shows up to the courtroom drunk one day because his wife was having health issues, and it's like, now I don't have a good lawyer in my case. So it was a mess, man. So this whole time I'm facing deportation, and you would think like, hey, that would be enough to make you start thinking clearly. No, and this it's not enough. It still was not rock bottom for me. I tried killing myself 2 times. It was, for some reason, that was still not rock bottom for me. I started looking for rehab centers because I knew I wanted to help. I knew I wanted to change. I grew up a Catholic Roman. When I hear people talk about, forms of religion, I can wholeheartedly tell you I know what a religion is. I know what it's like coming and being in church and just doing things because you're being told to. Okay, now stand up. Now get back on your knees. Now pray this. Now say this. Now say that's a genuine religion. You're
Yeah.
believing something that you don't even know why you're believing it because you were raised up into it. Ask me why I was a Catholic. Why? Because my dad was a Catholic. Why was he a Catholic? Because my grandma was a Catholic. That's literally what religion is. You're believing in falsely just because it's like you're born into it, raised into it, but you have no idea. You cannot witness for yourself and say, this is why I am a Catholic. This is why I'm a Christian. This is why I believe in God. And I didn't have that. I did not have that. You can say, oh, but you grew up in a religious household. It doesn't matter. If you don't have something set personally with God, it doesn't matter what kind of household you grew up in. So even me growing up in a Catholic household that would go to church every week, I still didn't have that ambition to be like, oh, God's going to change me. Start looking for a rehab center, and I always face the same problems. One, do you have medical insurance? No, I don't. Okay, sorry, sir, we can't help you. Next phone call. Can you pay out of pocket? How much is the treatment program? Anywhere between 30 to 60,000 a month. No, I don't have this. And this, even then, it's just a detox program. Like, it's not like a full-on 6-month life change program.
Yeah.
Then would be the third hardest of questions. Are you a resident of the United States? No, I am not. Sorry, sir, we cannot help you. Like, there was always some kind of like, I'm trying to change, but there's always some kind of hindrance of why I cannot go to these centers. So at some moment that I said, that's it. I'm trying. It's not working. And that's it. I accepted it. I'm going to die one of three ways. One, friendships from my past are going to catch up to me, and I'm going to get killed. I'm going to mess with the wrong person. Something's going to catch up. I'm going to get shot and killed 100%. Two, one day I'm going to get too drunk. I'm going to go driving. I'm going to crash the car, and I'm going to die in a DUI accident. Or three, one day I am going to have an overdose, and that's it. My family's, someone's going to find me somewhere dead off of the overdose.
Mm.
And the sad thing is, I accepted it and I embraced it. I was not afraid of it. I just pretty much I just accepted defeat. I just accepted that this was gonna be my life. This is gonna be my end. This is gonna be the end result of the life that I lived. That's it. And I was just like, I didn't care because at that moment I lost a very crucial element of our lives, is that I lost hope. I did not have any hope in myself. I did not have any ambition. I did not see a purpose in my life. And that was my life, man. And I tried looking, and it was my life. I
Lead
remember.
us into the moment where a stranger hands you a pamphlet. I know we have about 18 minutes left in the show. I really want to get into the moment where
Yeah,
God reveals truly himself to you, not
yeah.
religiously, not through people, but directly.
I tried the church, the Christian church, a mega church out in Vacaville. I did baptism with them. And there was a man that greatly helped me in my life, bringing me the initial element of the gospel, which was showing me love, man. A stranger showing me love. And this man would invite me to come to church and sit with his family. And I was the kind of guy that in my addiction, I would take alcohol in the backpack with me to the church, and I would go and I would drink alcohol while in the middle of church and go back into the sanctuary. And this man would have me sit with his family because he so wants me to receive the gospel. They're at that church. I did get baptized to that church, but unfortunately, I was not ready for what was to come. I was not ready to surrender. I
Mm.
would tell myself things like, you know what, I'm going to change. I'm going to give up alcohol, but I'm not going to give up beer. I'm gonna give up the drugs, but I'm not gonna give up weed. I'm gonna give up cigarettes, but I'm still gonna smoke a couple here and there. Like, yeah, I
Mm.
was almost like trying to make these limitations. Like, God, I want you to do something in my life, but don't touch these areas. And we
Mm.
know what's gonna happen when you do that. So what happened is that I tried to even do baptism, believing that this was gonna be the answer for me to like just wash away all my sins through baptism. And it didn't happen, man. It didn't happen because I was not serious. I was not ready. I was not genuine with the Lord. I ended up 5 days later going into the darkest moment of my life, which is I started doing crystal meth every single day for the next 2.5 months. This was in 2014, right after my 24th birthday. For 2.5 months, every single day doing meth, smoking it. At this point, man, I am becoming paranoid. I have a fear of the dark now. I start hearing voices. I think spiritual doors opened up at that point, man, because I started going all kinds of crazy. There was a moment where I am working out in the Bay Area, and this man that we're working for, he we come work for him Thursday, Friday. We're talking about, hey, we want to come back Saturday, finish the job. He says, no, absolutely not. Come back Monday. We come back Monday, and this guy, he's been watching me this whole time, man, running in and out of that porta potty. I had to go in there, get my fix, come out, flying on the ladders, going crazy fast. 15 minutes later, I'm about to crash. I got to go in there, get my next high, and keep going. I think he noticed that off the bat. And man, this guy hands me a pamphlet for the rehab center. He didn't tell me what it was. He's just like, yeah, some people that can help you out. You have friends that have, these problems. I'm like, I have you never want to say, hey, it's me. Cause at this point, I didn't want to say it's me no more. At this point, I'm like, that is my identity. I am my addict. I don't care about it no more. So I'm like, yeah, I have a friend that might be interested, but let me ask you, do they ask for medical insurance? And his answer was like, no, these are good people that are going to help you out. So I end up putting the pamphlet in my pocket. I go home. I do my routine, my drinking, my drugs. And at the end of the night, I'm already, high. And I just start thinking to myself, well, what's the worst that can happen if I call this place out? They're gonna tell me no, just like everybody else. I'm not gonna lose anything. I decided to call this place. I didn't read the pamphlet. I just called the center. I speak to a man and he's asking me, well, when can you come to the center? I'm like, I'll come right now. Like, why not? I'll come right now. I end up going that night. I get the pamphlet that day. I end up going that night. No questions asked. I come to the center, and this was a God Would Provide a Life Change Center out in Sacramento. And you know what? I am glad I did not read the pamphlet, because if I would have read the pamphlet and if I would have understood this was a faith-based center, I probably would have not won. I would have not gone, because at that moment in my life, I would say there is no such thing as God. If there was God, why did this happen in my life? Why did that happen in my life? And I would take everything bad in my life and I would blame it on God and say, God, if you are real, then why did my cousin die? Then why did my dad leave me? Then why did I end up in addiction? Why did I hate my life that I wanted to kill? Like, where were you at then, God? Like, this hatred, this resentment to God. It's like, how can I be mad at him when I was never even close to him?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we go back and we don't give credit to God when the good happens in our lives, but when all the bad happens, all of a sudden it's like, oh, God, is your fault. And a lot of us are like that.
Yeah.
So I end up at the center, and the first morning waking up, I start withdrawing from alcohol, from the drugs. And these guys are praying loud. These guys are speaking in Slavic, Russian, Ukrainian, not a lot of English. And I'm like, man, where am I at? When I was thinking rehab center, as I had mentioned to you in our talk, man, I envisioned a hospital. This was not a hospital, man. This was a house out on the farm with the German Shepherd outside.
Yeah.
So it was not what I was expecting, but I was open because I was desperate. I wanted to change. I was open for it. When I still slowly started figuring out that this was a faith-based rehab center, a Christian place, I'm like, oh, what's the harm in it? Like, I already tried the Christian scene. I mean, what's the harm in it?
Yeah.
I tried it out. My first Sunday, I came on the Monday night. My first Sunday service, they were doing baptism, and they did baptism in the river. Man, this was the first time I had ever seen this in my life. It was beautiful. I was, man, that's awesome. That's way cooler than my baptism. My baptism was in the tub, you know. These
Yeah.
guys are in the river, man. This was like you have to experience it and witness it at least one time in your life for you to be like, wow, that is pretty cool, you know. Then by my second week, I was already wanting to leave. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this no more. I think maybe like 8 9 days in, I had made my decision that this center is not for me. I do not understand the language. I do not understand the culture. This is not my place. I'm the only brown fella in the whole room, you know? Everyone else is tall, handsome, and beautiful, and I'm over here, short little brown guy. You know, I'm like, I can't do this. So I felt out of place, 100%. I felt out of place, not because the church, the people made me feel out of place, but myself, I made myself feel out of place. I
Yeah.
felt like I made myself feel like this is not where I'm supposed to be at. You know, you're not a Christian. You're not like these guys. This is not your people. You don't understand. Like I would make all these excuses within myself to like disqualify me why I should not be in this place. You know, and I remember there was a moment where I'm like, I know I'm gonna leave, but I know if I leave, I know I'm gonna die. 100%. I know that's what's gonna happen. And even though I would say there is no such thing as God, I still like, all right, I'm gonna fast and I'm gonna pray. For the first time in my life, like a very simple, genuine prayer. And I fasted. And I learned about fasting there at the center, did not understand the full concept, just took it as a grain of salt, just like, hey, just don't eat, bring your petitions to the Lord. All right. So I took a fast, and my prayer was very simple, and it was like, Lord, if you are real, show me you're real, because if not, I'm gonna leave this place. Throw me a bone, and that's it. Show me this is where you want me to be, and that's it. 2 days later, I go to church. It's a Friday service, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, that's it. Same routine, song, sit down, listen to a sermon, and go home. And I had already made a decision that weekend I was going to go home. At least I can say I tried for 2 weeks and it didn't work out. I'm gonna go find somewhere else, you know. And to my surprise, Roman, what ended up happening was that Friday service, when I looked up at the projector, I look up inside, I already feel defeated, and I look up at the screen, and I look up at the Russian lettering for the songs and the worship songs, and I start to read the Russian language, and I start to sing and worship, and I start worshiping with the guys, and I myself am confused. I don't know what's going on. It's almost like as if I'm reading these letters and putting them together like I knew this language my whole life. I do not know
Wow.
what I'm reading. I cannot translate what I'm saying, but all I know is that I can read it, and I feel something inside that I can't explain. Like I feel fulfillment. I feel joy. It was interesting, you know. Do you know what you're reading? No, I don't know, but I'm happy that I can be with you guys singing, you know? So it's like sometimes we take even just worship for granted. Just giving this just together with the body, just giving this joyous praise to the Lord as worship. You know, like we even take that for granted. And for me, it was like I so desperately wanted to be part of the church, and that was me being part of the church. It was just even being able to sing worship. I come home and I'm like, all right, Lord, I see you're real. There's no way I can explain how this just happened. I cannot explain. Like, that's just like some supernatural miracle you just did. I cannot explain how this is possible, you know? So then I asked the Lord, Lord, all right, if you're real, well, I see you're real, but then show me why this rehab center, why this place here in Sacramento. So that following weekend, that's that following Sunday. So that's 2 weeks into the program. There's a missionary service, and during that missionary service, they're giving accounts of their time in Mexico, their missionary trips in Peru and Honduras, and they're playing a video of an orphanage in Honduras. All I've been hearing in this church is Russian, and my translator in my ear whispering in my ear everything in English. At this point, that's all I've been hearing. No English actually from the pulpit. And this little boy starts talking in Spanish in the video, and he starts talking about how happy he is, how much joy he has in life, and this and that. And I just start like, man, I'm getting mad at this kid in the video. Like, man, why is this kid so happy? What does this kid have that I don't have? You know, I'm just looking at this kid in the video. Like, I have like an envy, like a grudge against this kid that I don't even know. Like, man, what gives this kid the right to be happy? I had a family, I had friends, and I'm just thinking in my mind everything I had that this kid is never gonna have. I'm like, and why does this kid have the right to be happier than me right now? This kid in the end, he's just like, man, soy tan feliz porque yo tengo a Cristo en mi corazón, which is like, I'm so happy because I have Christ in my heart. I have Jesus. And when he says this in my mind, it was like a boom moment in my life. It was like, man, that's why this kid has Jesus. I never had that in my life. You know,
Wow. Praise God.
I fell on my knees, man, crying. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm done trying to fight. I came to the center thinking I'm gonna give 1 month, 2 months if I really need it. That's it. But then I'm gonna go home. Man, at that moment, I stopped counting time. I'm like, you know what? I that's what I need. That's the answer. I need Jesus. I've never had this in my life. I'd never had Jesus. Man, I gave up. I stopped fighting, and then, man, from there, everything just completely turned around. It wasn't the easy process because when you are having to understand and have it revealed to you through Bible, through the Holy Spirit, that there's parts of your character, parts of your life you have to let go, you have to get broken up from. It's not an easy process, man. Having to ask for forgiveness, but here's a big one itself: learning how to forgive yourself, man. You know,
Yeah.
that's a big one itself. And I think a lot of us, oftentimes, we carry things past the cross. We bring things to the feet of Christ and say, Lord, I am sorry for the things that I've done in my life. But then you take it back with you and you continue holding and walking in that shame. Man, it was a process for me to learn how to forgive myself as well, and just be like, hey, this wasn't your fault. Your dad left, man. That wasn't your fault. You did all these things while you were under the influence of drugs, man. That's not your fault, man. This was
Yeah.
a broken condition. This was the darkness, man. Just move past it and let go and let God. So it was definitely a hard time. I mean, there was moments I wanted to leave the center, but I always had godly men above me that would give me good advice. I mean, I remember even one time coming to the altar and you're praying for me, and I'm telling you, like, Roman, I just, like, I'm struggling in this, I'm struggling in that. And I remember one of the prayer that you said for me. You said, Juan, I want you to pray, and I want you to say, God, give me a hatred for sin and love for righteousness. Do you know how often I share that with people now when I pray for them? Because a
Yeah.
godly man like you gave that into my life, man, I can give it on to others. But you have to be open, man. You have to be willing. I mean, you have to be honest with your brokenness, and you have to let God deal with that brokenness. Because the problem at the end, man, is not your addiction. The addiction is the result of a deeper issue. And until you get those deeper issues figured out, man, that addiction is going to be there no matter what. You can be in the center for 2 years and leave. And if you never had those roots taken out, man, I'm sorry, man, but you're going to go right back. And for me, the a big root for me, man, was unforgiveness and resentment. I had unforgiveness for my dad. I had a lot of resentment for him, and I had to let that go, man, for me to actually be able to grow in my relationship with God.
Usually it's the most painful thing within your spirit, within your heart, that is like that barrier between a full breakthrough in God and you just kind of living on the edge of God's presence. You're kind of barely walking into that, into that grace, into the freedom. And it is a painful process to go back into your memories, to that event, and forgive and to bless that person. I know we do counseling quite often, and you're a pastor as well, where you sit down with the person and they're like, I want to forgive. um, I've been saying I've forgiven this person, but it just keeps coming back. That resentment, that anger, that pain keeps coming back, and you just have to say, "Hey, this this might happen right away for some people, but for some people, it's going to take a week of you just getting before God and saying, God, I desired the best for this person that hurt me. I
Yeah,
bless them." And you proclaim this over their life. And the more you bless the person that hurt you, and you continue to proclaim that in the spiritual world, in the physical realm, it does something, man. It unties these ties in these bondages and breaks chains. And man, that's amazing. I know we have a few minutes left.
yeah,
You are now a family man. God gave you you came to a center where there was a bunch of Russians, Ukrainians. You couldn't understand them. Now God gave you a wife, a Slavic wife as
Russian
well,
wife, yeah,
Russian wife, and you started the church in Vacaville. Now you're in Pennsylvania. Kind of share where you are now spiritually as far as starting your ministry. I know your next process is to open a rehab center there.
yeah,
Maybe share with the people, and I'll go ahead and I'll drop your info in the description if anybody's in
yeah.
your
So
area. They
right
could reach
now
out.
we are here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It's called, people know it as Amish country. I moved here in 2019, and you can, when God puts a calling on you, you can try to run from it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen. You're gonna you cannot say, God, I want to live for you, but then not do what God's calling you to do. When I made a decision like, God, I'm going to live for you, God, I dedicate my marriage to be for you. You better be ready to fulfill that promise, you know. So we believe that the Lord has led us into this direction to plant a church. So we did plant a church. We started the church a little bit later last year. I'm gonna say like more towards the fall. I had a moment where I got stuck in Mexico last year, man. That's for a whole different story. I got stuck in Mexico for over 2 months.
Yeah, congratulations. You got your papers.
Got my green card now.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank the Lord.
Yeah,
So
nice.
God is
Praise
good. It's a
God.
process. I mean, what was it like, man? From 2008 till 2024, like 16 years to get
Wow.
my green card. So I got the green card. Thank the Lord. I'm here in PA now. We've been here now for this is gonna be our 6th year. So we opened the church up here with God Will Provide, and it's in Lancaster County. It's got God Will Provide Lancaster. We want to open a rehab center. We see a need in the city, 100%. And here's the thing, man. When we look back statistically, Pennsylvania right now in this last year, 2024, was rated top 3 in the country with addictions,
Yeah.
number wise. So we see a need 100% here in the area. So right now we are doing church at home. We're doing Tuesday home group at home Bible study, and we are right now in the process of wanting to find a house for a rehab center. It's a growing movement, 100%. You know, and it's not gonna happen overnight, but we know that where there is the need, the Lord is gonna put someone there to fulfill a place for people to get freed. You know, where there is freedom needed, God will be there to give the freedom. It's just a matter of, does the person want to come looking for it, and is the person ready to be open for it? You know, so right now we are doing the home group. We're slowly just hoping and praying, Lord, send us the right house. Once the house gets planted, man, I know the ministry is going to take off and it's going to grow. But right now we're a home church, you can say, and we're happy about that. It's a growing process. Right now it's the time that we can plant the foundations of the
Yeah.
church, the teaching, the biblical doctrine, just like really just give the very beginning. So right now we're actually working with a lot of fresh new people, people that either were hurt in church or people that at one moment were in church and walked away from church. So it's a completely new group that we're working with. We're excited for it. We're happy for it, and may God bless the ministry and lead it, as we work into fulfilling His kingdom here.
Yeah, so the rehab center that we're talking about, for his area, it's basically going to be the same program, maybe slight little changes that Juan actually went through in Sacramento, California. That's actually the place where I had a real encounter with God, and God also took away all of my pain and sin and broke all the chains and called me into the ministry. So um, if you guys received anything from this interview, if you think there's a family member or a friend who could benefit from listening to Brother Juan and his story, just to instill hope for the future. I mean, you guys saw and you only heard about 10% of the big story. And so that's our goal, is to help the same type of people, who we used to be, and really, because we could relate to them, they could relate to us. So God bless you. Like the video, comment if you have any questions, and share it. Hermano, gracias para tu tiempo. Dios te
Hey, thank
bendiga.
you, Roman. God bless
Thank
you, my
you.
brother.
Yeah, have a wonderful day with your
Hey,
kids.